Story 1. I've seen old age, dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. Dying while still yourself is a good life, and I'd rather be around for a good time, not a long time. Story 2. Don't fear death because it feels like an end to life's chaos. I have accepted its inevitability and found peace in that acceptance. Living with purpose makes the thought of dying less daunting. Story 3. I have stage 4 breast cancer. I was diagnosed 7 years ago and have been in treatment ever since. I don't want to die, and I hope that I keep defying the odds as I should have been dead 5 years ago. I do, however, see death as the reward for enduring this life. I have to believe that when it does come for me, when the act of dying is over, that for once in my life, I am finally at peace, pain-free, and rested. Because of my experiences, I do believe in reincarnation, but I really hope that this is the end of my series of coming back. I am just so tired. Story 4. I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born, and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. Mark Twain. I do not know. This stuck with me since I saw it somewhere. Story 5. My mom passed away unexpectedly in 2022. I'm looking forward to death as I won't have to be in this world without her anymore. If you can't tell, we were very close, and I miss her with everything in me. Plus, there's only a few things guaranteed in life, and death is one. I have no control over it, so I'm chugging along, hoping and trying to be the best person I can be. I feel like I'm failing half the time, but I'm still going. Story 6. Because the way I see it, I break free from all my problems. Debt, not my problem anymore. Mental issues, gone with my mind. Aches and pains, gone with the rest of me. It's like I'm finally able to relax. Story 7. Reality is so strange and fantastic, so I think there is a chance that death could lead to something similar. No one knows, of course, but it's a possibility. Story 8. The philosophical idea that where we are, death is not. Where death is, we are not. As far as I know, most of the universe is matter without awareness. I'm a tiny chunk of it that got to be conscious and aware for an infinitesimal fraction of time. This seems like a tremendous opportunity. The fact that it's not going to last forever, again, as far as I know, seems like no reason for dissatisfaction. Story 9. Look at the world we inhabit. If I were religious, which I am not, I would be fully convinced I am in hell at best, purgatory or limbo. Life is a prison for the mind, body, and soul. We are all wage slaves to oligarchs. Death is the only guaranteed relief I have. I would never commit suicide, but I am actively looking forward to the moment I do not have to put up with this nonsense anymore. Story 10. I meditated during a one-day retreat a few years ago. My ego left, and I melted into the ground, roots, concrete, weeds, and mountains. I became not me and a part of everything for just a few minutes. I hope death is like that. Story 11. I wish I could understand any of these answers because I fear not existing. Of course, I won't know when I'm dead because everyone says that. Well, you won't know. It doesn't matter. The thought of not existing is horrible to me. Story 12. I don't fear death because it's the ultimate reminder of life's value. Knowing that our time is finite gives meaning to every fleeting moment, every connection, and every achievement. Death isn't an end to fear, but a horizon to embrace. It's what makes life precious. Instead of fearing it, I choose to focus on living fully, leaving behind love, kindness, and memories that echo beyond my time. After all, it's not the length of life that matters, but the depth with which it's lived. Story 13. To everyone that's in here, I just wish that you are doing well, and may we all live until the day where we can say that it's a life well lived. Hang in there. Story 14. What's to fear? I will not be there. If you believe otherwise, try to look at the evidence for what you have been told. It is just old stories. There is no evidence. Story 15. I do not fear death at all. I am not happy about what happens in between though. Living is tough. Being dead is easy. Dying is not for the faint of heart. Story 16. Life is going to likely end eventually with physical and mental decline, helplessness, loss of bladder and bowel control, inability to walk. What is death compared to that? Aging is far worse. Pain could be far worse. Story 17. I see death as one of the most natural, unavoidable facts of life. I did fear death when my children were young. I did not want to die because they needed me. Now they are grown, and I understand they will grieve my passing, but they will be fine. So I no longer fear death. Story 18. I've actually died 3 times. One I remember. There is a beyond that can't be described. Your soul rejoins the universal spirit that is one. You are no longer separate and trapped in a body. Your soul is on this human journey to learn lessons in a great series of reincarnations. The universe wasn't ready to let me stop learning mine, and death was one of them. On the other side, I can see that we're all one, and that this human experience is a marvel to witness. Every day is a blessing. Story 19. Death is the only thing that isn't my problem. You know what devastates the heart? Losing someone you love. Me dying means I finally don't have to suffer more losses like that. I'm worried about the people who rely on me. I'm the one everyone turns to in crises. But I've worked hard on teaching them how to learn for themselves if they ever need to. Story 20. Life is miserable. Even if I were a billionaire and had every desire met, I couldn't be happy knowing there are millions of people suffering in this world from homelessness, illness, abuse, servitude, starvation, and cruelty. Death is a welcome escape from what I view as a hellish world. Story 21. Because it is not the worst that could happen, and I personally do not believe it is the end. Even if it were and there were just oblivion afterward, that still does not sound that bad. Story 22. Because I am religious, and I think something good is waiting on the other side of death. I do not want to die, and I am not in any hurry to do so, but the idea of it does not scare me. Story 23. In my opinion, because it's going to be like it was before I was born. I won't even know I'm gone. It's kind of like the quote from Epicurus, "Death is nothing to us. When we exist, death is not. And when death exists, we are not. All sensation and consciousness end with death, and therefore in death, there is neither pleasure nor pain. The fear of death arises from the belief that in death, there is awareness." Story 24. I used to, but I saw it was pointless. It's inevitable. I understand being young and being scared of it, but the older you get, it just doesn't seem like a big deal. I don't want to live long enough to be a burden on anyone, to the point where I can't take care of myself anymore. I might be slightly worried about how I die, hopefully not painfully, but that's about it. Story 25. People who are not afraid of death. Do you hate your lives a little? It really terrifies me. The end of everything. No more family, no more friends or little things that make me happy. If I hated my life, I couldn't wait for it to come. Story 26. Everyone does it. If we had eternal bodies that lasted forever and did the right thing, maybe things would be different. I have a history of chronic pain. My stay here has been thoroughly unpleasant, and whatever's next, which is likely nothing at all, sounds like a well-deserved vacation. I'm okay with dying the same way I'd prefer to be at ground zero during a nuclear event. Story 27. The older you get, the more taxing life becomes. Eventually, you realize that the only thing scarier than death would be if life never ended. Without death, life would be hell and have no real value. Story 28. When I saw my cousin on her deathbed, she had a look of, "I can't wait." Her husband died 4 months earlier, and she never started to grieve. She stopped her dialysis and basically said, "Forget you, I'm leaving." And she left. Story 29. Because I'm so tired. The only reason I'm still here is because of 2 people that would be deeply hurt if I was gone. But when it happens, I'll finally be done. Story 30. At the risk of sounding pretentious, Socrates said something like, "Fearing death is attempting to sound wise." I had an aha moment. We don't know what happens, so why do we fear it so much? It's a natural part of our existence. A transition to something else. Story 31. It's inevitable. Your first breath is the beginning of your last. Someone said time is a currency you don't know the amount of you have. Spend it well on things you love to do while you can. Story 32. Because it's a reward for a life well lived. Peace, quiet, rest. the sweet nothing of not existing, free of burdens, responsibilities, woes, and unpleasant people. Edit. No, I'm fine. I'm not eager for death and don't need to talk to someone. I just have a very pragmatic view of life after a childhood defined by death. I may not fear the Reaper, but I'm not inviting him in any time soon, that's for sure. Story 33. My ticket is already punched, and once I have died, it will feel to me as though I have never lived. So it doesn't ultimately make any difference when I die, because it's a zero-sum game at the end of the day. Story 34. As edgy as this might or might not sound, why should I be scared of a punch I know is coming? My only worry is that it might not be just a regular punch. Basically, it might be something painful like me dying in slow agony, but other than that, everyone is going to get hit with that punch sooner or later. Story 35. I've never feared it before. I actually looked forward to it. But now that I'm actually facing it in the near future, I find myself grieving the end. It isn't exactly fear, but a deep sadness I didn't ever expect to feel. Story 36. A couple of reasons. First, talking about death as a state, meaning not being alive. I've already not existed for about 13.8 billion years, so way longer than I've spent consciously existing, and it wasn't terrible. Why should death be scary when not being born yet wasn't? Second, death as in the act of dying. I obviously don't know what's going to kill me. There's a chance it'll be absolutely horrific, which is unfortunate. But chances are, my experience of dying is going to be a bunch of things I've already experienced. I've been in really severe pain, I've been very frightened, and I've felt very sick. If I die of a heart attack, will it be more painful than my appendicitis? More frightening than that time I got stuck under a dock in the pond and thought I was going to drown? I think the levels of fear, pain, and sickness are likely to be similar to things I've already gone through, just with a different outcome. And there's a fair chance I won't know for sure that I'm dying. Hopefully, I'll be able to comfort myself with the hope that I'll wake up in an ambulance somewhere. So while I'm reasonably afraid of specific kinds of dying and take measures to avoid them, I'm not scared of dying in general. Third, sometimes I like to wonder at what other point in the universe were the atoms that make up my body in as close a configuration as they are now. What were they a part of then? What cool stuff will all the ingredients of me get used to make in the future? It sucks that I have to die to free up all this stuff, but it's neat to think about what else it'll become. Fourth, I was suicidal for a lot of years. I really want to keep living now because the world is weird, fascinating, and cool, and I want to keep experiencing it. But I do think part of the awe I feel is because I know it won't last forever. So I guess I mostly think that's okay, that my knowledge of my own mortality keeps things interesting. Story 37. As an intensive care unit nurse, I deal with death all the time. I'm more scared of what people will do to keep you alive than actually dying. Additionally, as a practicing Muslim, we all came from God, and to Him we shall return. This life is just a test. It's temporary. The afterlife is forever. What's written for you is done. When it's your time, it's your time. That's not to say this life is meaningless. Many suffer in this life. Many have blessings. It's all a test to see how grateful you will be to the Creator for what's given to you. We are told to be kind. Give to the less fortunate. Cherish those around you. Protect women and children, and stand up for justice. Even if you're not Muslim, these are not mutually exclusive to Islam. I've noticed most religions agree on these things. One person alone won't change the world, but millions standing for a cause can. Millions being good can bring change. Be part of the good in this life, and pray you will be rewarded in the afterlife. Story 38. I don't fear death because Jesus Christ promises eternal life if we believe in Him. I hope you do the same, my friend, but I understand people have different beliefs. I also understand it's hard to believe in something you can't physically see. I have doubts too sometimes, but the historical evidence points to Jesus being a real person and not just a man but God in human form. What evidence do you have that supports what you are living for? Ask yourself that question and wonder if it has more evidence than Jesus Christ. I am almost certain it does not. I hope you find the truth, my friend, because that's all I try to do as well. All glory to God, and may you find peace. Story 39. I accept it because I know that I can't avoid it. I've seen my dad die. It was tough, but he is no longer suffering, for which I was and am grateful. My mom has a terminal disease that will take her eventually. I know I will feel the same way when she passes. Story 40. It is just another part of the cycle. It is going to happen someday. Sure, I will do my best to live a long life, but if I know I am going to die, then I am not going to freak out. Story 41. I fear losing myself, but the pain of life has always been too great for me. When you are suicidal since 8 years old due to not being accepted for who you are and being forced to repress and lose yourself, you kind of stop caring. I do not want to lose myself, but sometimes death sounds nicer than continuing to suffer in this sad life my dad forced me into when he could not accept me for who I was. He condemned me and forced me to lose important years, basically almost every year of my life. Story 42. It's a natural part of life. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I've had 2 friends die this past year in their sleep due to heart attacks. Puts everything in perspective as you get older. Story 43. There is nothing keeping me clinging to life, except broken dreams that sometimes I still wish to fulfill. I'm not in a rush to die, but every bit is just extra time to me. Story 44. Lots of things in life are scarier than death. Of course, I would rather not die in some horrible way, but again, a lot of horrible things can happen while you're living.